Hi folks, this is International Master Kostya Kavutskiy, and here I'll be doing a video on how to mainly use your rooks on open files, and specifically, once you have obtained access to an open file, how to make the most out of this advantage and give yourself the best chance of winning a game. So our first example here is quite a famous example, but very important for a strategic point of view in terms of your education. And here playing white, we have great world champion Alexander Alekhine against another great player of the past, Aaron Nimzovich. So here Alekhine is clearly better with a big space advantage and some pressure against this knight on c6, including his rook on c1, bishop on b5, and so on. Now of course he's looking for a way to increase the pressure, and he comes up with a very famous maneuver that is actually now named after him, and this is called Alekhine's gun. So we will see exactly how he increased the pressure in this position to the maximum and was able to win quite a nice game. So he starts with the move rook c2, and he's preparing to double rooks on the c file. At this point, if black makes a move like knight to d8, this may have been better than the game continuation, but black is already in huge trouble here. White can simply either play bishop d7 or rook a to c1 and will get full control over the c file. Instead, black went passive with queen e8, just trying to defend the knight with all of his pieces, but as we'll see, this was not enough to save the game. Rook a c1, rook b8, queen e3, rook c7, and now the key move in white's position, rook to c3. Notice that this knight on c6 is now pinned in two ways. First from the bishop on b5 and of course from the rook along the c file. So this knight is basically a sitting target for white's pieces. And with rook c3, white is setting up the so-called Alekhine's gun. Rook comes to c2 and queen to c1. This is the gun with the two rooks on an open file in front of the queen, exerting maximum pressure against the knight on c6. Now black played rook b to c8, so the knight is sufficiently defended. But here comes a pretty surprising move, bishop a4. And the point is that black's rook on c7 is not sufficiently protected, and white is simply threatening the move b5 to win the knight outright. Black was forced to give up a pawn himself with the move b5. White takes, and this gives black the tempo he needed to bring the king to d8 and support the rook. So now b5 is no longer winning a piece, but as you can see, white's positional advantage here is simply tremendous. And after a simple move h4, black is actually in somewhat of a zugzwang here and resigned in this position. The point is that none of black's pieces can move without dropping the c6 knight or some material, because the knight is still pinned to the queen on d7. And black is basically going to run out of pawn moves sooner or later. For example, g6, white can continue waiting, h5, and white can even play knight g5, threatening to play knight f7 check, and black's position is under total collapse. If you don't believe me, you're welcome to analyze this game on your own with an analysis engine or a training partner, and you'll see that black's position is just completely lost. So I'd like to move on to our next example now. Our next game features two more incredibly strong players, somewhat more recently, and this is the game between Nigel Short playing white and Timmon playing black. Now here, Short, who is playing white, occupies the d file with the move rook to d1. And we'll see in this game he doesn't let control over this file go, and the fact that he does control the file allows him to end up winning an incredible game. So black played the move queen c5 here, and already this might be giving white a decisive advantage. Based on my analysis of this game, I thought another option for black would be to play h6. This is kind of a prophylactic move against white's play. But after the strong move rook to a3, white is indeed going to have an enormous advantage here, as the rook is coming to d3 in order to take full control over the d file. So nevertheless, white's advantage here would still be pretty significant. In the game, black played queen c5, and white played the move queen h4. So this is a second idea I wanted to focus on in this video, in that when you're controlling an open file, in this case the D file, this extra control over the position allows your pieces a lot more freedom to attack different parts of the board. In this case, white basically has a free hand on the king side because his pieces have more access on that side of the board, thanks very much to his control over the D file. Specifically, his bishop is ready to come to h6, and his knight is ready to come to g5, which basically gives white a very straightforward and nice attack. So let's see how the game continued. Black played b6. White starts with bishop e3, chasing the queen away from that square, queen c6, and bishop h6. Now black, under no circumstances, can afford a trade of these bishops. His king would simply be left without any sufficient defense. White takes, and now white has threats of both knight g5, as well as even rook to d4 and rook h4, and black's king is simply not going to survive for very long. Instead, black played the move bishop h8, and white plays the move rook d8. Of course, black cannot capture this rook, as he will be checkmated on the back rank. So black played the move bishop b7. So analyzing this game, I realized that black's only and best defense in this position was to play the move bishop d7. This would require black to be comfortable with a queen sacrifice, as after knight d4, black must give up his queen or else he loses the bishop on d7. So black would have to play rook takes d8, knight takes c6, and bishop takes c6. Now white still has a very large advantage in this position. I believe the queen is stronger than the rook and bishop, but this was a better defense, and at least here, black is now in control over the d file and may get some counterplay. So that definitely was the way to go. In the game, bishop b7 was played. White played rook a d1, bishop g7, so taking control over the back rank once again, and short retreats the rook with rook d7, keeping full control over the d file. Now black played rook f8, bishop takes g7, king takes g7, and rook to d4. So white has retained full control over the position and now is ready to start swinging some of his pieces over to the king side in order to launch the decisive attack. Black's pieces are incredibly passive here and simply have no active play. Black chose to move rook a to e8, queen f6 check, king g8, and now a very nice move h4. So white is threatening the very simple advance h5, h6, and he'd like to mate the king on g7. Now this is in fact what happened in the game, except white did not actually use his pawn in the decisive attack. Note that black has absolutely no time for queen takes a4. He's simply going to get mated in a couple of moves. Black played h5, and now some of you may recognize this game as a very, very famous example of the so-called king walk. In this position, Grandmaster Nigel Short played king to h2, indicating one of the most beautiful ideas that most of us have ever seen, the point being that he's going to walk his king along the dark squares to h6 in order to checkmate black's king. So amazingly, black had no defense to this fantastic idea. The control over the position means that none of black's pieces are able to get into the game or into the center, and this gives white's king the freedom to walk in and deliver mate to the enemy king. It was possible for black to play bishop c8. This would at least prevent the idea of the king walk, but here white wins with the move knight to g5. Black takes the rook on d7 and g4. And because of the passivity of black's pieces and because of the control white has over the position, black is actually getting mated here by force. We're threatening to take on h5 and then play queen h6, queen h7 mate. And if black takes on g4, white can push his pawn to h5, again threatening the pawn to h6. After black takes this pawn, white plays queen h6, and black has no defense to mate on h7. So the game concluded with rook to c8, king g3, rook e8, king f4. Black played bishop c8, and now the simple and beautiful king g5 is already good enough to win. The point is that if black plays king to h7 in order to prevent white's king from coming into h6, White can take the pawn on f7 with check, and black's king gets mated anyway after king to h6, simply no defense. So after king f4, Timmon, unfortunately for him, had to resign, and chess history got another very, very beautiful game with a really fantastic concept. But the main point of this game was the fact that white was able to control the d-file is what gave white the full flexibility to put his pieces on the king side and launch this decisive attack. Black's pieces were simply unable to communicate with that side of the board. With that, let's move on to the next example. This is a lesser known example, but one that illustrates a very similar idea. Here we have world champion Alekhine playing black, and his opponent is Blumenfeld, who is a strong Russian player. Now here black is clearly for choice because of his control over the d-file. But let's see exactly how he converted the position. In the game, white played rook f1, but a much stronger move was the move g3 in order to immediately kick black's knight from the f4 square. And after knight e6, knight to e3, queen d3, black would have a small advantage here, again thanks to his control over the d-file. Instead, white played rook f1, black played queen d3, and here the difference is that if white changes queens on d3 and plays g3, now black is winning a pawn after knight e2 check, and so white is completely losing in this endgame. So after queen d3, white is unable to trade queens and can't kick the knight away from f4, where it sits really actively. So queen b3 check was played, king h8, and knight g3. And here comes the key idea that I wanted to share with you guys in this example. Black already has the control over the d-file, but it's not always enough to win the game. And in cases like this, you need to find a way to open a second front. This is also related to the principle of two weaknesses that some of you may have heard about when relating to the endgame. Basically, black already has one advantage in controlling the d-file, and he now needs to create a second front in order to again attack a different part of the board. So here comes h5. Very strong idea. Black is just wanting to play h4, h3, and open up the white king. This is pretty similar to what we saw in the previous example. White played bishop to c1, black follows through, and white captured the knight on f4. If the knight moved to f5, black is winning here with a pretty simple tactic. Knight e2 check, king h1, and knight g3 check, and black is winning because the rook on f1 is hanging. So bishop takes f4 was played, black recaptures, knight f5, and of course h3, the strongest move, launching this attack against white's king on g1. Of course, it would be a pretty big mistake to take the pawn on e4, as white would be able to take the h4 pawn and then return with his knight to f3, and his king would be safe for the time being. h3 is much stronger. White played the move queen e6, looking for some activity, but it's simply not enough. Black took on g2, and now white kind of falls for a nice trick that was prepared by Alekhine here. Essentially, white is already lost, and the best move was to play a move like rook to e1, where of course black just has a decisive advantage. In the game, white captured the pawn, not seeing anything wrong. Black gave a check on f3, king g1, and now a nice finishing combination, queen takes f1 check, and rook to d1 mate. So again, the control over the d-file is what gave black a initial advantage in the position, but it was this idea of opening the second front that allowed black to convert his position. So let's move on to our final example. In our last example here, we have actually one of the games of the World Championship match between Karpov and Kasparov. So this game was played in 1990, I believe this was their final match. And here Karpov is playing white and has a small advantage thanks to his pawns in the center that are quite well advanced. But the position seems like it's about to equalize since the rooks are about to be traded, and it seems like black does not have any major weaknesses. But here comes a fantastic move and a key idea that I want you guys to remember. In order to keep his control over the c-file, Karpov found the move rook to c6. In fact, it's quite probable that he saw this move ahead of time, meaning before he reached this position. Now the point of rook c6 is that after black takes on c6, white takes back, black cannot capture the pawn in view of his problems on the back rank. Queen d8 check, bishop f8, bishop h6, and black can resign. There's no way to defend the bishop on f8. If black cannot take the pawn on c6 and must keep it on the board, then white has a huge advantage as this passed pawn on c6 is really strong. And so black here is definitely losing. For example, bishop e5, bishop b4, and black's position is going to collapse. This rook c6 move was an excellent way of taking control over the c-file using a tactical idea. And this is often seen in the games of strong players. They may have some kind of strategic concept like controlling the open file, but it must be justified by finding the right tactical idea at the right time. So Kasparov played bishop e5. Of course, he realized he cannot capture the rook on c6. But now white is going to be able to use this rook to his advantage. Bishop c3. Really nice move, basically offering an exchange of the bishops, which would give white a dominant queen and rook versus queen and rook endgame. If black takes on c3, white will recapture, the rook has to step to the side, and white can infiltrate on the 7th rank and on the 6th rank, and here white's pieces are dominant and white is most likely going to win at least a pawn if not two. So after bishop c3, black played bishop b8, queen d4, f6, bishop a5. All this time black is unable to capture the rook on c6 due to tactical concerns. Bishop d6, and finally queen to c3. Now the rook is fully supported and black has to give up his control over the c-file, giving white a huge strategic advantage. So let's see how Karpov converted this position. g3, gaining a little bit of space, h5, and bishop c7. Finally forcing the trade of bishops, which gives white access to the c-file. Now black could take on c7, but that would be a lost position, so Kasparov played bishop a1, but of course now his bishop on a1 is basically out of the game. Bishop f4, rook infiltrated on c7, and the final breakthrough with d6 effectively decided the game. Now black's king is also in serious danger. The game concluded with g5, d7, rook f8, bishop d2, bishop e5, and rook to b7. Now this was the 40th move, and in this position Kasparov resigned. Basically, the d7 pawn is incredibly strong, white's queen is coming to c6 as you can see to collect black's queenside, and black has absolutely zero counterplay to speak of. So, in view of this hopeless position, I think Kasparov made a sensible decision in order to resign. He simply didn't want to see this position any longer. But this idea of rook c6, I really hope you take away. Using the advanced pawn to create kind of a pseudo outpost in the position on c6, seeing as how the rook is basically untouchable due to tactical reasons. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please do check out the PGN of all the lessons if you want to analyze the positions for yourself. And until next time, this was International Master Kostya Kavutskiy signing off.